I've invested over $200,000 into the stock market and generated over six figures and 50 million plus YouTube views from my online business in my early 20s. Now I'm here to share the money lessons I wish I would have known. Now here's the truth. Most people, even making things like 50K, 80, 100K, still feel broke. And it's not just your paycheck. It's how your money slips away from you. And in this video, we're going to break down the hidden reasons you feel broke and how to finally get ahead. Now, number one, your expenses rise with your income. You heard that right. This is one of the biggest ones because people oftentimes, right, you see a paycheck and it's human nature to want to spend that on these different needs that you have, right? Now, what are the major things that you actually need, right? Food, water, shelter, right? A few other things to help you that are your basic necessities, right? But then, if we're being honest, there are so many other things that are labeled as wants. And what happens is when you spend time on places like social media, right? You go outside and also you see people driving a certain vehicle. It looks like everyone is winning online, right? And especially in certain environments, it just looks like everyone is doing so well. When the truth is, majority of them are probably either living paycheck to paycheck like you, and they're just flexing to try to impress people that they don't even really like or care about, right? So you have to make sure you keep this in check, because if you don't, you're going to put a lot of extra stress on yourself, and you really don't need to do that whatsoever, right? So do not rise to your expenses and the income. You have to take it with a grain of salt. You got to be careful with the lifestyle inflation for sure. Number two, you're living on borrowed money. Now, if you've seen all of the videos online about, I believe it's called Klarna, and you have these buy now, pay later programs, right? Where pretty much what they allow you to do is you're basically taking a loan out on the littlest of things, right? People are buying phones and they're putting it on buy now, pay later. They're checking out for any purchases that they make online. And we could even talk about bigger purchases, right? Furniture, cars, phones as well. And what happens is all you're doing is putting yourself into debt, right? And a lot of times what people forget about, these buy now, pay later, of course, you're going to be paying interest on whatever you're paying. So you look at it and say, oh, the price is lower. Yeah, this is great. Let me do it. But what happens is over the long-term period of time, and especially if you're only making minimum payments, they're charging you more and more for what you're purchasing. So you're literally paying more just because you thought that it was a good idea to just take the bait and try to pay less this month, right? But long term, you're literally killing your financial future if you continue to stack up a ton of those. So you have to be very careful, and that's the trick that they're going to try to give you, right? And it's really debt. What it's doing is taking away from your future, right? Because today it's easy. Instead of paying $1,000 phone, for a phone, you put down $25 and you think you've won. But they're really going to win the long term with how much money they make on you. So you really have to be careful with all these types of buy now, pay later, and even any type of financing in general. Number three, you confuse income with wealth. Now, of course, if someone's making six figures, yes, they look rich, right? It looks rich, but this is not the same thing as wealth, right? When someone is making six figures, right, they're having pretty decent paychecks, right? If they're investing in their retirement, that could be going away as well. But it looks pretty good from the outside. But again, when we really look at the problem, a lot of times it may not even be a making money issue, but it's more of a spending issue and how you're managing your finances, right? And of course, if you're not putting money into assets that are going to generate you more income, you're literally just spending to a lot of times look successful and again try to impress those other people. So you got to keep that in mind, that wealth compounds over time, right? And it's not just what type of paycheck you have today, but it's about what are you doing with your money that's going to provide that freedom and future that you want long term, right? And if you're tired of being in this cycle of being broke, right? You want to build real income, you want to make a career off something that you really enjoy doing, and maybe want to add an extra stream of income to what you have currently going on. I've done it through YouTube, and I've put together a resource that shows you exactly how I generated those 50 million plus views and even over 6 figures. Click the link down below to learn more. Number 4, you don't track where your money goes, right? And if you realize a lot of these points are more on the management side than in terms of what people are making, right? Because like we talked about before, let's say you're taking out a ton of different loans, right? You're borrowing, you have to pay it back later. What happens is, especially when you don't track, you have a payment here, you have a payment here. Maybe you have subscriptions that you're forgetting about, right? You have all of these little holes in your finances that basically at the end of the month, it feels like all of your money is just gone because you had to pay all of these different things and you didn't track them carefully, right? When a lot of times you probably even had enough to where if you budgeted correctly, man, you could have just paid that phone in full, right? Or maybe you had to say no to the shiny object. Maybe it was the new car, new house, whatever it is, right? Maybe you had to live below your means to have that success and that freedom that you're really looking for. But most people can't tell you where their monthly paychecks even go, which is insane, right? But then they wonder why you're in such a difficult financial situation and living from that paycheck to paycheck, right? So without tracking, and again, things like subscriptions, even eating takeout, all these other fees, without actually tracking, having a rough estimate of these things, you can't begin to even understand where your money's going. And that's why you feel broke, because you just have no sort of way to track things, right? And I always like to say, what gets measured gets managed, and no visibility is equal to no control, right? So keep that in mind. And number 5, you don't have a money system. Now, I always like to use the example of relying on willpower. And what a lot of people do is they think that they can just rely on willpower to track all of these things and not spend. And that's the worst thing you could do, right? Because willpower is a finite source, right? So sure, for some period of time, you can say, oh, I'm going to discipline myself and I'm just not going to spend the money. Where instead, what you should be doing is making it even easier on yourself and saying, okay, instead of having to discipline myself, I'm just not even going to see the money. I'm going to invest it and make automatic transfers to where I don't even see the money in my account. So I literally have no choice and I can't spend that amount, right? So automation definitely helps in this area, especially if you're paying down other debt that you have. Again, just taking it off the top of that monthly check can save you a ton of headaches, right? And without a system, you are not going to get to that position that you want to be. And this doesn't mean you have to be tracking a million different things. You have to have a million spreadsheets, no. But it means budgeting for the things that you actually find important. And then, of course, making sure that if you're in debt or you have these other things, these monthly expenses that you need to pay, that they're getting done, right? And also making sure that you're setting yourself up long term to be strong in the future, especially when it comes to retirement time, so that you are not just questioning and wondering, where did all my money go? Now, if you enjoy learning about finances, click this video on the screen. You won't want to miss it.